Hey, my name is Frank Yost, and I'm the CEO of Ketone. And today we're going to I'm going to talk about whether or not ketones should be banned from the Tour de France. First, a little bit of backstory. 5, 6 years ago, Team Sky was asked about ketones and whether they're using ketones, and their answer was that they had to Google what ketones were, and they all laughed. And then last year, Lance Armstrong asked a former Team Sky athlete, hey, what about this thing called ketones and specifically ketone esters? What about it? And the reply was very interesting. He said, wait a second, they're not banned. And Lance Armstrong was like, well, I never said that they were banned, but go on. And then he went on to admit that they've been using them for a while and how people use them as like a second fuel tank is how he described it. Fast forward a year, and Lance was talking about on his podcast about how one of the athletes had to go back to the back of the peloton to grab a bottle. And then one of the co-hosts said, well, why did he have to go back? Why didn't he just get some regular water? And that's when Lance said, well, I think that he was getting ketone esters. He's like, when you need ketone esters and you're at the last 45 minutes, you will go back to the back of the peloton, get it, and then he darted off. And lo and behold, many news articles came out about Lance's comment. And then lo and behold, that athlete who was winning with the yellow jersey decided to admit or come clean or say, yeah, I'm using ketones. Ketones are part of our nutritional strategy. They're not WADA banned. They're not even in question. So now some teams are in uproar saying that they should be banned and it's not fair. And so that's what I would like to talk to today, whether they should be banned and how that would work. So first of all, my understanding of things that are banned isn't, they don't necessarily ban things that work. They ban things that are unhealthy. So if, let's say, beet juice was discovered to show a 5-10% performance gain, are they going to suddenly ban beet juice? No, of course not. It's about the health. So caffeine, my understanding, was banned for a period of time because it's unhealthy. But then they brought it back because it was so mainstream. It's in coffee. It's in the way we live. So they allowed this unhealthy drug that they know is a stimulant and just said, it can be kept in check, and we'll just allow people, because you can't really necessarily take 10 times more caffeine and get into dangerous levels. Well, maybe you can. I don't know. But caffeine is a drug, a stimulant, and it was brought back in and allowed. Ketone ester is not a stimulant. It doesn't overclock your system. It's just a second fuel source. It's what your body makes naturally when it burns fat in a ketogenic diet or in a multi-fasted state. So your body's already making it and it's just drinking that fuel source. Now, the unique property is being able to combine that with glucose, having a dual fuel where you have glucose and ketones in your system at one time. So, should it be banned? Absolutely not. I think it's silly. How would you even test for it? You would test someone and test their blood ketone levels? Well, what if they were doing a multi-day fast, overnight fast, ketogenic diet, or even during athletic performance, sometimes ketones can actually raise where your body runs out of glycogen, it can actually convert. So it'd be difficult or impossible to test for that as well. So I think it's silly for them to consider banning it. And as far as it being banning it because it's unfair, one of the teams said, well, we didn't have access to it. So I made an offer on Twitter that any Tour de France team that doesn't have ketone esters can reach out to me on Instagram, Twitter, or directly email frank@ketoneaid.com, and I will do my best to FedEx and get you ketone esters in time. We even have a Facebook group where people discuss different protocols of what they've done, and I asked on there whether anyone was in France with ketone esters, with Ketoneaid's ketone esters, and I did get a reply. So I actually have someone that has ketone esters in stock in France and is willing to make arrangements to get that down to any athlete that is currently riding the Tour de France that wants to use it. Now, we normally don't recommend using it in and during a performance. It's a little bit too risky. Different things can happen. You can take too much of it and lower blood glucose. But if you were to decide to take ketone esters and you haven't, and you want to do it during the last few days of the Tour de France, here would be the way to do it. First of all, you do microdosing. You take much, much less during the performance. We're talking about 5 or 10K, 5 or 10 milliliters of KE4 right here, ketone ester KE4. There's two companies, by the way, that sell the ketone monoester developed by Dr. Veach and Richard Veach and Todd King at NIH. So it's that exact monoester. So you would take small amounts, 10, maybe 15 mLs, and you can also put it into your current sugar drink bottle as well. You can take that for slow release, but I wouldn't necessarily expect much from that. The less risky option is for you actually to take it after your performance for recovery, because then it won't impair, change for good or bad, the actual performance, but then the actual recovery. When Greg Henderson told his epic story about how he was in the Tour de France and a team, which we now know as Team Sky, dropped a bottle on the side of the road. Everyone freaked out for the team freaked out for many miles until they got the bottle, and he found out that they were drinking this, $5,000 bottle of ketones, and then he understood why they would go back. And then 2 years later, he took the drink and he was clocking 10% higher watts. But more impressive than that was the next day, his HRV monitor had said that he had practically taken the day off. He was just not sore. So you could take the ester after your performance for that day, and you could take 15 mLs every 2 hours for the next, 3 times, 15 mLs 3 times is what I would suggest. That'd be a very low risk way to help your recovery for the next morning. So yeah, that's it. Let's see what else, what other topics. I was asked to do this video by cyclingopinions.com, so I wanted to thank them for asking me to put this together. Things people have been asking me whether I supply Tour de France teams. I have sent it to 3 teams for them to try out. One team or one purchase was for $100,000 at the beginning of the year, 100,000 US dollars. It was done through a third party, so I wouldn't know, who purchased it. And let's see what else. So there's also different types of ketones. So there's a lot of ketone salts out there. Don't go rushing and reading stories about ketones. It's the ketone ester, not ketone salts. And then you'll always get one doctor that chimes in, because the reporters have to get 2 sides to every story. And they'll find someone that says, well, there was a paper that says ketone esters don't work. Let me explain. The ketone ester in question is D-beta hydroxybutyrate D13-butanediol. It has other names such as DBHB or DBHB ester, D-beta hydroxybutyrate ester, or more technical, R3-hydroxybutyrate, R3-13-butanediol. All those names. You could also call it the Veach ester. That's how people call it. It's just known in the science world as the Veach ester or ketone monoester. So it's a type of ketone ester. It's the only one that's commercially available. 2 companies sell it. Ketone Aid is one of them. But it's not to be confused with the one paper that showed an impairment with technically a ketone ester. That is a completely different ketone. It's called acetoacetate with racemic 1,3-butanediol. If you actually look at the paper that showed a decrease in performance, when they tested the blood ketone levels, the peak was, drumroll, 0.1% increase in blood ketones. So just not the same thing. It's not even remotely the same thing. And I think a bunch of people got sick and stuff like that. Ketone Aid is the only drink that has been used in a clinical trial by a currently sold commercial product. So other studies have been done, but they weren't supplied by the actual company that is, selling them commercially. And that study, they focus on sprints and the mental cognition at the end, which is an important thing. The mind of the people with the placebos got worse as their workouts, got harder and harder. They weren't able to answer the brain games. But then the ketone ester, it was actually steady. And there is a theory that a lot of the benefit might not only be fuel for the body and for the muscles, but actually fuel for the brain. The brain fatigues, starts second guessing itself and holding itself back. So fueling the brain might actually make the muscles and body move faster. So it might be very largely mental. That's it. And you do not need to be on a ketogenic diet. people can use the fuel easier if they're on a ketogenic diet, but it was initially designed for non-ketogenic athletes. But I think many people in the Tour de France, my guess is that they do a low carb diet, ketogenic diet, and then on game day they bring in the dual fuels, or they can use esters during the workout, but then they bring in glucose for the actual performances, because then the body can use both fuels. That's probably the most efficient way for the body to run. All right, thanks.